ambitions. He must live within the area of his own available intelligence. And if he does not do this, he is bound ultimately to come to difficulty. Well, you can look through the situation, and if you have a living parent or someone who is very close and has long been very fair in matters, you can perhaps discuss it a little bit with them to see whether they had discovered in you characteristics and traits which you have not recognized that you have. This does not mean that they will give you important or concluding advice, but they may point out how you can help to solve your own difficulty. Actually, we are all in this world to solve problems ourselves. Now, in a complicated civilization such as we live in now, it is not always possible to do this alone. We must call in help. We must do various things that will assist us in protecting our integrities and our normal rights and our responsibilities. Now, if it seems that you do need to have some kind of advice from someone else, then you must begin to estimate the type of person whom you believe can give you the advice that you need. The present tendency is to be a little afraid of professional, technical advice. We feel that too much of this advice is simply given by the hour at so much an hour, and that there is really very little basic understanding. Therefore, the psychologist is not always selected as the one to help in these emergencies. And almost anything that a psychologist can do without the practice of psychiatry is to try to help the individual to estimate the nature of his own character. He must realize that he is in his present difficulty because of what he is. He is not in trouble because others have variously injured him. Maybe he is injured in some cases, but it's usually because he has opened himself to the injury. He is not actually looking for an outside cure. He is looking for something that will help him to rationalize his own inner need. So if he goes to an advisor or a helpful person, there are several things to be taken into consideration. Nearly all advice that is necessary for the intimate problems of living is involved in religion, either religion actually or through various phases of religious philosophy or religious practice. Therefore, the tendency may be to consult a religious person. That is often a good thing to do, but there is also something else that has to be definitely considered. We must find someone who we know to be qualified to do the thing we need done. And for the most part, the religious advisor deals in platitudes. He tells you all kinds of abstract things, but he cannot provide the particular, detailed, specific information that will help you out of a difficulty. He also is apt to exercise more than proper authority on you because he is part of your idea of the religious image. To you, he has special authority because of a religious position, and this authority may not in any way include the capacity to help you. Now, the person, on the other hand, who has this authority may be very honest, very willing, and very kind-hearted, but has he ever asked himself whether he is qualified to give advice? I know one case that came to my own attention where a person who really believed that they were inspired by some overpowers, that they had been illumined in some respect, became a sort of counselor to a great number of persons over a period of years, and the result was almost completely tragic. The advice given was not the advice needed. The person giving it did not know what they were doing. But when the problem got difficult, instead of facing the fact that they had failed, they simply moved out of the community and went elsewhere and did the same thing. They left their damage behind them, or simply closed off contact with that which failed to meet their expectations. These people should have settled down quietly and tried to figure out why the advice they gave others did not work. And usually it did not work because the foundation of it was not realistic. The background of the information was not solid. It had to do with strange visions and psychic expressions and manifestations which no one could prove, but at the same time were passed on as solid facts. These solid facts evaporated, often leaving the victim worse off than before. So if you are going to be an advisor, it is necessary to prepare for the job. Now, parents have to prepare for the job of advising their children, and more it is becoming almost a requisite that the parent is a very skillful thinker on a number of important subjects. The advantage of extra years in which to gain this information is also a deciding factor. But actually, if you hope sometime or would like to believe that you can really help people, that you can get them on their feet when they're in trouble, and if you believe partly in the Christian ministry of preaching to those who need, or giving advice to those who are forlorn, then it is necessary to have an adequate foundation on which to work. The individual who gives advice must be well informed in the area in which the advice is needed. Now, it's obvious that no one can be well informed on all subjects. Therefore, there are areas in which advice has to be very general, or else it can become a misrepresentation. Actually, however, behind all of our thinking, there is a simple background which we can all learn, and which we can all use in measuring the value of our own advice. Nature is governed by certain rules, by certain laws. The universal purpose to philosophy, religion, and even science is fairly well recognized. What the individual must do to survive is to obey the rules governing survival. The individual who wants to be happy must obey the rules that bring happiness. The same of health, the same of knowledge. Even in sports, unless the person is willing to take the necessary training, he will not excel. So in every basic problem of life, there is a generality in which advice can be passed on almost without particular intelligence. But it is simply advice to keep the rules, to keep the faith, to read the Scripture, to follow the commandments of Moses and Jesus. And that if individuals will do these things, most of their problems will evaporate. But our present generation is made up of people who have joined various religious organizations, but have kept all of their previous prejudices. They are not really actually practicing what they preach or what has been preached to them. They have been newborn in some faith, but they do not forgive their enemy quickly. They do not do those things which would protect them against most of the troubles of life. If there is nothing else available to help a person or to give a person basic inspiration, probably the best thing is to suggest that they read the Sermon on the Mount. Because it is simple, it is solid, and it is something that has stood the test of ages, and it is also a high level of integrities from which we have constantly fallen. But these integrities will not fall to help us to survive. We must go back to them. All solution must be according to integrities. Nothing else will actually do any good. If a person has a problem, he must try first to find the source of it in himself. And if he does that, he probably will not have to go much further, because he will find that what is necessary is a new attitude, a new adjustment, a new relationship with the situations that annoy him. So we have this problem now that brings it to a sort of philosophical ground. There is a school of thought that takes it for granted that if we dominate the thinking of another person, we must accept and assume ourselves the consequences of our own advice. Now, this is a very unpleasant concept, and in fact it's one that no one really wants to follow. We do not want to give advice and learn later that the individual took it and his problems were worse than they'd ever been before. If we do hear this, of course, we have always the traditional evasion that either they did not do what we told them to, or else it was all their own fault, not ours. But where we pass on an influence strong enough to condition another person, where through psychology of dominance, or through some traditional background, or through religious superiority, our influence becomes so definite that it is difficult to resist, and this influence goes bad, we are certainly in some way involved, because I know a number of persons who have ruined other people's lives by their hasty advice, their dogmatic attitudes, their unwillingness to practice the basic principles of Christian charity. So this problem brings into philosophical focus the matter of the responsibility that we have when we over-influence other people. And by over-influenced, we don't necessarily mean a good heart-to-heart talk or something of that kind, but where we put behind that some strange psychic pressure, some mysterious factor, where the person giving advice insists that the advice is not originating with him, but was given to him directly by the divine hierarchies. This makes it very difficult for the other person to resist what is in fact a delusion. So that where we press an advice, supporting it with factors that are not true, or trying to influence and maintain this influence by exaggeration, or by threats, or by all kinds of misrepresentations, then certainly we are at fault. We are definitely breaking the rules of good living. We are breaking the rules whether we know it or not. Now, many people who suffer do not know that they have broken the rules, but they are still suffering, and sometime they must face the fact that breaking the rules is the cause of suffering. So if a person trying to help another goes beyond the normal state of his common knowledge and attempts to press, force, or over-influence, he is going to take on consequences which may be difficult. A good example of this happened a number of years ago, and a person who came to me when a young woman, when she was in her early 20s, had a romantic affair. The family disapproved, of course, and the mother particularly disapproved because she had already planned that in her older age the daughter was going to live with her and take care of her. With this in the back of her mind, she fought to destroy the possibility of a marriage. As a result of threats and petitions and hysteria and tears and appeals to family loyalty and divine relationship and honoring the parents and all this, the girl gave up the romance. They lived together, the daughter and the mother, for years. The mother finally died, leaving a 65-year-old daughter who had never been out of her mother's sight. Both lives wrecked. The older woman gone, the younger woman now beyond the age of building a home or having a normal relationship with life. Now, the mother was moved primarily not by the fact that the marriage might have been wrong. She was moved by the fact she wanted to hold the girl to herself. She wanted to be able to dominate this person so that this person would take care of her in her older years. Now, there's a good case for karma. It's almost certain that the older person will sometime have to face this, because it was wrong, it was selfish, it was self-centered, and it was prejudiced. Now, with these factors behind any bit of advice, we may begin to think in terms of karmic difficulties. We begin to realize that where ulterior